Well, it's my privilege and honour to be here this evening as part of the World Diabetes Day, and again to join this community which I've spoken to a number of times. And it's always wonderful to be able to bring the concept of psychology in our mind into the space which is often predominated by the body and biology and so on. So hopefully tonight will give you a different perspective or open your mind to something maybe that you hadn't really thought so much about before. So we're going to talk about mental well-being, caring for yourself and your loved ones, which is not always so easy. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about how you might be able to make a few little changes if things are feeling a little out of balance, or you maybe have some concerns about the mental well-being of yourself or people that you care about. Kathy's already given a very lovely introduction to me. Some of you may not know what a health psychologist is. Anyone not know what a health psychologist is? Okay, let me just clarify because it could be quite helpful for you. So you guys may have heard of psychologists before. Psychologists are experts trained in the mind, in behaviour, and in, kind of that thinking, feeling, and how we kind of live our lives. Psychiatrists are medical doctors who specialise in the mind and learn more about how to help people with mental illness in particular. Now, psychology is a very broad field. There are many different people that specialise. There are clinical psychologists who you may have heard of before or become in contact with, and they're quite a bridge between the world of psychology and psychiatry. So they tend to work with people with more serious mental health issues, but also with people with very common conditions like depression and anxiety and so on. Whereas a health psychologist also has the training with the mental health, but has a much broader understanding of medicine. So we learn more about biology, we learn about health conditions, health promotion, so we're a bit of a bridge between the world of psychology and medicine. So that's the difference between those two. And there are other psychologists as well that do specialise in things like counselling psychologists and community psychologists. So we're all out there trying to do our best to help people. What I'm going to cover tonight, I'm going to talk about why the mind matters, so that hopefully you will have a reason to listen in and to take what would be relevant to you away from tonight. I'm going to talk about some common challenges in our mind and our emotions that relate to diabetes. How to know what the warning signs are. If someone's not doing too well, how can you tell? And then what can we do about it? How do we balance looking after ourselves with also our care responsibilities for others? I'm going to give you some tips, some things that hopefully you'll find accessible and practical that you can take away and start using in your life. And then I'm going to talk about your action plan. So here's the thing. People come along to sessions like this, they have good intentions, right? They'll be entertained for an hour or so. They'll be like, oh, that's such a good idea. And then what changes? Often not much. So I'll be doing my job by making sure that you leave with something that you feel that you can put straight into action in your own life. How does all that sound? Sound all right? Good. So, why does the mind matter? So let me ask you some questions. Have you ever felt stressed about diabetes? Yeah, a few of you? Well, understandably so. Many people actually describe feeling fed up, frustrated, overwhelmed, or even burned out. And in other sessions I've run for diabetes, I've talked about something called diabetes burnout, where actually it just all gets a bit much and the system doesn't cope so well anymore. That's a known condition, and there's even books about diabetes burnout. So you can read more about it if you think maybe that might be you. And a lot of people who are living with diabetes also have poor mental health and well-being. So about 41.6% of Australian adults who have diabetes also report medium, high or very high levels of psychological distress. So it's extremely common. And to add insult to injury, when we're stressed, we experience higher levels of stress or distress, it spikes our blood sugar. our insulin levels go up, our blood sugar levels go up. So it's actually a really nasty cycle. Yeah. So stress is something we need to be aware of and manage. You know, family members, they struggle too. Some of you might be here tonight as a supporter or loved one. They often report feeling overwhelmed by the diagnosis and what it means in terms of the ongoing care needs of the person that they love. So they're stressed. And they often feel helpless because they can't do anything about the illness, or they find it difficult with how that person is caring for themselves. Sometimes that can be a stressor. There are common emotions that we can feel. Anger at the person, anger at the situation, confusion. You know, if you've had the situation where you feel like there's lots of information coming at you about diabetes care and it seems conflicting or confusing, or maybe some of it goes over your head, that's really common. Frustration, guilt, or even a sense of responsibility about the condition. What if I could have prevented it? What if I could have changed it? What if? It's common. So family members have their stress too. Have you ever found it difficult to change behaviours? If someone says it's really easy, come and tell me after your secrets, okay? Changing behaviour is really hard because as a human being, you are hardwired to be as automatic as possible. Your habits are ingrained in your system and they're not easy to overcome. So we know that adjusting to and coping with and managing all the changes that accompany diabetes is stressful. I mean, these are all the things that you've got to be aware of every day, and that's a limited perspective too. That's a lot to try and make change around. In fact, it's really interesting. So research has shown that people know what to do. They're educated. They've got the information, but how's that translating in terms of behaviour change? Not very well. Okay? This is an area of diabetes management that I think is of the greatest need. More education and more support to change behaviour. Because it's not very fun going to the doctor's office and getting told off again because you're not doing what they've asked you to do. And often people just feel quite ashamed, they feel down about themselves, they say, I don't have enough willpower, it's a problem with me. And that's not necessarily true because it's a lot more complex. And as a psychologist, an expert in behaviour change, there's a whole lot more that you can learn about it that can help you be successful. So I want to talk about that tonight with you guys. Have you ever been concerned about not coping with it at all? Feeling like, actually, I don't have a handle, I'm not coping. Maybe you're even aware that you're doing things that are harmful. Well, it's pretty inevitable that living with diabetes brings a whole bunch of problems with it. Physical problems that affects our personal lives, it affects our working lives, and it requires extra support. About 50% of people living with diabetes are also thought to have a mental illness such as depression and anxiety. That's a pretty alarming statistic. That's about twice the national average or people who are otherwise in the population. So these two things are playing into each other, our mental health and our physical health. So this is why we're talking about the mind. I want to give you an example of a piece of research. This particular study was done about 10 years ago, and what they found, or they were interested in with a focus group, was finding out about women's day-to-day experiences living with type 2 diabetes. And what they were particularly interested in finding was understanding the feelings of depression and anxiety and anger experienced by people, women living with type 2 diabetes, and the impact that was having on their overall quality of life. And there were some interesting themes that they found in talking with these women. This is what they found. There were 41 women in these participant group. They said they found struggling with the changing health situation. That was something they commonly reported. They reported encountering challenges in their relationships with themselves, with the family, and with other people. It created a cascading effect. They increased their worrying about the present and the future. And if you've ever been known as a bit of a worrywart, that takes up a lot of mental space, particularly when you're meant to be doing things like sleeping or concentrating on things. So it can be pretty intrusive. And having to bear multiple responsibilities for self and others. And this would be true for men and women. What it is to bear the burden or the extra responsibility of caring for loved ones, children, older parents, etc., etc. And choosing to take a break. That's what they reported they were concerned about. Actually, not that they could or couldn't, but the choice to take a break. So we'll talk a little bit more about taking time out later on and maybe how important that is. So, are you convinced that the mind is important? I hope so. Let's move on. So they concluded that people with type 2 diabetes often experience these feelings, and it does affect their life as a whole. And by understanding and addressing the emotional health of these women, the relationships improved across the board. So providing extra support, that person, the family, and the health providers can all improve as a result. And overall, this allows for more successful diabetes management. Emotions count. So, it actually starts with awareness. Being aware of ourselves, being aware of what's happening inside of us, and how we might be showing some signs. So here I want you to get your thinking caps on. And I'd like you to use 1 or 2 people around you as a sounding board. What do you think are the warning signs of some mental health issues? What do you think you might notice in yourself or in someone else that they're not coping so well? I'll give you a couple of minutes, see what you can come up with. Not socialising? Absolutely. Yep. Poor sleep? Irritability. Yep. Yeah, that's right. Yep. Not sleeping? Yeah. Anybody else got some ideas that are going around? Diet changes. Yeah, like maybe appetite going up or down, weight changes, definitely. Anything else that you might notice in people that might concern you? Compulsive thoughts. Yeah, maybe thinking a bit more negatively or can't help but have some worries come in. Yep, absolutely.
People might tend to feel really upset and cry really easily.
Yeah, absolutely. More likely to have emotional outbursts or less control over their emotions. Yep. One of the most common things is disturbance in sleep. Often it's interrupted sleep, difficulty getting to sleep, but it can also be what we call hypersomnia, where you actually sleep too much. For some people, that's also a sign. There was a hand down the back. Withdrawal. Actually, again, one of the most common things, pulling away from people. And that's one of the things that is the most common sign, but is also the most almost counterintuitive thing. Because pulling away from people and isolating ourselves makes it worse in the long run.
Increased alcohol intake.
Absolutely. Alcohol, other substances, yeah, there's a reliance often on a bit of a numbing effect. Yeah. So you guys have got the right idea. And to help it make it a little bit more accessible, because you're all right, you've all got things that you've recognised in yourself or other people, I want to isolate a few of those warning signs into behaviours, feelings and sensations, and cognition or thinking, that what happens in the mind. And look out for them because there's quite a number. Now, if you recognise a few of these in you, don't hit the panic button too much. We all do some of these sometimes. Let's just see how many maybe you count up. So here's what to look out for. Look out for changes in personality and behaviour. You know, they're just not their normal selves. They don't, you're actually concerned, and not just once off. We're talking about over a period of time. At least a good couple of weeks of you kind of going, they're not themselves, not quite right, and it starts to raise some alarm bells in your own mind. Starting to avoid important activities. That could be the diabetes care, it could be work, it could be other responsibilities, but avoidance comes in. Not managing themselves, comfort eating, just seeming less happy, more irritable. Someone mentioned irritability. And all of these things could be explained by many things, right? Yeah, and maybe you've all had some of these at different times. We're looking for when people have several of these happen, and it may not be obvious to you. But if you really love someone, you're usually pretty finely tuned into them. And you may notice even before they do that they're not coping so well. That's why family and support can often be so important. So that's the behaviours. These are the feelings or body sensations that we know are connected. So you mentioned the sleep issue, absolutely. Fatigue and low energy. Yes, that may be linked to what might be happening with the blood sugar, but it may also have to do with something going on with the mind as well. Depression is well known for leaving people feeling tired and fatigued. Feeling flat, down or numb is known to be associated with depression, as is low motivation and energy. Difficulty breathing. Now, often when the people experience anxiety, they find that their breath comes up in their chest and might struggle to breathe or even holding their breath. So it's quite well known that difficulty breathing or feeling a weight on the chest may be also a sign. Aches and pains in the body, again, there could be many explanations as to why there's aches and pains, but we do know that when we're tensed up, when we've got stuff going on in our mind and we're stressed, the muscles and the tendons, they start to tighten, and you notice because your shoulders are coming up or you're starting to feel that lower back starting to hurt. So those can also be signs of what might be going on in our mental space. Digestive issues, we know that there is a connection between anxiety, stress, and digestive issues. Sometimes that can be in irritable bowel type symptoms or other kinds of digestive issues. And just losing interest in the things that used to be pleasant or enjoyable in life and stopping doing them. And unfortunately, that's another one of those counterproductive things, because it's doing those things that we love, the things that we enjoy, that's a protective factor. It's the thing that helps our mental health stay well. And getting out of bed, okay, some of us are not morning people, me too. It's not easy getting out of bed. But when it becomes like it takes hours to get out of bed, or it's extremely hard every day, that can also be a sign. So this is what can happen in our feelings and in our body. And then that's what's going on up here. Jumping to negative conclusions. The intrusive worrying, difficulty concentrating, the racing mind, taking things a bit more personally than maybe is necessary. Even thinking, what's the point? Why bother? Right? Putting your hands up in the air and no matter what I do, nothing works out. Yeah. Rushing, not thinking through things, not making good decisions. Hopelessness, helplessness, these are impaired memory, even wondering if the memory is going, that could be connected too. So these are all warning signs. Now, as to what they're attributed to, it might take a professional to say, well, this is what is actually happening. But if there is enough of these warning signs presenting, it warrants having a conversation. So that's what's to look out for. So how do we get a balance? How do we get ourselves and the people that we care about in the best place possible? So I'm going to talk about a few different dimensions. I'll talk about the caring for others, how to work with support networks, building up your networks where you can get help from. Talk about a funny word that most people don't understand, delegation. And self-care. how you can look after yourself as best as possible. So let's start with caring for others. So whether you are the person living with diabetes or you're a family member or a loved one, it is such a balancing act of practical support, how you help them or give them assistance with whatever needs to be done, and that emotional support, encouraging them. And what we really encourage you to do is help them help themselves as much as possible. It can seem like a really loving act to take away responsibility from people. No, I'll do it for you. No, you sit, you rest. And it's meant to be a loving, caring act, but over time, that can disempower people. And we really want to encourage people to take care of themselves as best as they can for as long as they can. So encourage self-care. And if they don't know how to do something, help them get the skill. Yeah, it's teaching them how to fish. Yeah, not just giving them what you've caught. Utilising support. It's an important topic. Now, you guys are obviously already pretty enlightened because you're here, right? You already recognise the benefit of a community, of getting information, of knowing what services like the people out there are providing. That's an important part of that process. And so is the support from the people around us. It's known as one of the most protective factors. The protective factor is the thing that helps give us the best outcomes with our mental health and wellbeing. And healthy, positive relationships are one of the most important predictors of health and wellbeing. Let me just labour on this for just one more moment. Did you know that researchers found time and time again that the number one predictor of health and wellbeing and longevity is not whether you quit smoking, how much exercise you do, how many vegetables you eat, it's the quality of loving connection in your life. Yeah, time and time again. That's what protects us. So that's what's important to keep nurturing. So that begs the question, how can we build and best utilise our support network? Well, for some people it starts with asking for help. Now that's something that sometimes people find hard because maybe they think that if they ask for help it's a sign of weakness or not coping or, maybe they are concerned people might judge them. But you know what? Many people struggle. Everyone struggles. Everyone has hard times and nobody is perfect. Nobody has life down pat, or at least not for very long. We need the support of other people. So, when it's needed, see if you can acknowledge it. It does require us to overcome our fear of being perceived as inadequate, and it could be a challenge to our identity. For us to say to ourselves, well, maybe I need more than what I think I can provide for myself. And if I see myself as a strong-willed, empowered person or someone that can always handle situations, what will that mean to how I look at myself if I ask for help? These are big challenges and confronting reasons why people don't ask for help. And it's okay to ask for help because that actually helps build a positive sense of community. I mean, do you mind when someone asks you for help? Usually people are quite happy when someone from their heart says, hey, I need a bit of help. Sure, we're happy to help. And that's what builds connection. It's good for us. Yeah. Sometimes we need to build our support networks. So some of you here maybe, well, that's all nice for people who've got happy families, for people who've got lots of good friends around them, but I don't have those things. I don't have a lot of people around me. I don't know where to go. Well, I want to give you some options for things that could help you if you want to build up your network. These are just some ideas. Hubs where people exist that are generally pretty friendly people, where you might be able to build more connections. Anyone not know what some of these things are here? People know what meetup groups are? If you've never heard of meetup before, but you have an internet connection, a whole world awaits you. Because across this city and anywhere you go around the world, There are people who run little groups of like-minded people who are interested in something and they want to hang out together. So if you're interested in books, there's probably a book club around the type of thing that you like to do. If you want someone to walk with, because you know it's a lot easier to walk when you've got someone that you can have a little natter to along the way, there are walking groups. There are groups for games and fishing and all sorts of stuff out there. So whatever floats your boat, there's probably more people out there that you could catch up with if you wanted to meet some new people. These are all great places where you can build your networks. And we know support can take many forms. So it's not necessarily expecting one thing or one person to do everything for you. You might find that that connection meets a need or helps you in some way, whether it's emotionally or practically. Maybe they might help link you to other resources or things that you'd not heard about before. That's one of the great things about this forum. You get to learn about all sorts of new things that you didn't know before. And it builds that sense of community. Seeing faces that you recognise from previous events and catching up and saying, how you going? And you can use available services like your Diabetes SA membership and what it gives you. It gives you lots of wonderful things. And there's the old logo. I did it too. Didn't get the memo. So they're great. They're really genuine people who want to help. And there's many different ways that you can connect in with them. A few other useful resources. Your Diabetes Hub. It's an online, it's a website. They have heaps of blogs and useful information, and they run a Facebook group, which is a really active community as well. That's also useful. The Diabetes Centre at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, they've got lots of stuff going on over there. And they also have a group of volunteers that run monthly catch-ups where they're happy, they've done that extra training in diabetes and they're to help and to give you extra information and resources and support. They have a Living Well group education session, which is also some way that you can physically catch up with other people and get some support too. And there's also a hotline. So if leaving home or meeting other people, new people, may be a bit confronting for you, or if you want some help a little more quickly, you can call this 1300 number. And that's a national service that's provided by Diabetes Australia. So there's all sorts of ways that you can build your networks. Now I want to talk about this dirty word, delegation. Does anyone need me to define it for them? I hope you know what it means. Okay, so if you are known to run around like a chook with your head cut off, or if you complain about never having any time, you're so busy, then maybe you need to think about this fancy new product, delegation. How might you be able to hand off some things to others or find ways of cutting down how much you have on your plate? Because if this is you, you're probably stressed. And what did I say before about stress? It's a problem. Asking people to help, asking your teenage children to step up a little more, or whatever it is that might just help take something off your plate. There are services the government provides with some extra funding for things like a cleaner. Or maybe you want to try online supermarket shopping for the first time, or something that just gives you some time and energy and resources back for you. If there is a way you can hand something off, delegate a task, explore it and give it a try. And then there's self-care. It's not selfish to look after yourself. It's necessary. As the saying goes, you can't drink from an empty cup. You can't pour your care and love to others if you have nothing to give. You've got to look after yourself and to reconcile that is just as important as caring for others. It's your responsibility to care for you, and you'll be doing other people a greater service. So, how can you do some self-care? Take some time out. This is that choosing to take a break thing that research study pointed to. Take time out. It's up to you how you want to do it. It could be 5 minutes, it could be longer. But you know what? Even just 5-minute timeouts here and there do wonders. There's all sorts of research that shows that it increases productivity, it gives a freshening up of the mind and the body, just getting out. And this is the great thing, you know. Smokers used to be the ones that had all the opportunity to go out and have their smoko in their 5-minute break. You don't have to be a smoker to take time out. You can make that choice for yourself. Enjoy something that you like to do and make it for you. This is a really big topic I've condensed into one slide. Feed and exercise your mind well. This is important. Your brain, your mind, functions very similarly to your muscles. If you're not feeding them well and you're not exercising them well, it won't work well. So there's some things that you can do for a good mental health diet that I would encourage, like these things. Mindfulness is a wonderful thing that has a huge amount of research evidence that supports that it helps improve mental well-being, it reduces depression and anxiety, it works as well as antidepressants, and it hardly costs you a thing because it's just about bringing your mind back into the present moment and parking it onto something that is in your immediate experience. There are apps, resources, websites, YouTube videos. There's heaps of stuff out there. And if you haven't started having a play with mindfulness, I highly recommend it. Have some time out to read. Optimism is really good for your mind. Being able to see the bright side or being able to see and put things into perspective where there's opportunity. Meditation is very good for you. Mindfulness and meditation, often people think are the same thing, but there are many different forms of meditation. There's many different practices of mindfulness. They're not necessarily the same, but many people do practice mindfulness as a meditation. Eat well, exercise. Physical exercise is great for your diabetes and your mind. Being listened to, that's really good for your mind. You know, that listening where people are actually nodding and taking things in and not interrupting you, and they're not going, oh, well, that reminds me of this thing about me. But actually just being with you and listening to you, taking that in. I encourage people to start tuning out of some of the things that make you feel crap. The news can make you feel like crap. It can. And if it's not making you feel good and you're not necessarily feeling more informed, you might like to just ease back on how much you take in and put something else into your mind that makes you feel better. Something inspiring and uplifting, positive. Even just something humorous, funny. Watch a comedy show. Something that just gives you an uplift. Because if you get too caught up in all the bad news that's going around, it can be pretty depressing. So feed your mind something that makes it feel good. Combine what we call emotion-focused and problem-focused coping. That means when there is problems, there's a few different ways that we can respond. One is avoidance, head in the sand. Classic coping style. Some people are very good at it. But the two that we encourage you to use in harmony with each other is a problem-focused approach, which means if there's a problem, we look towards a solution. Right? Maybe that's what you're quite familiar with. If I've got a problem, I'm going to find a solution as quickly as possible, and that will ease my discomfort and give me a sense of something I can focus on. That's all well and good, but if we don't also tune into how we're feeling, our emotions, then sometimes the solutions that we're creating are not quite hitting the mark. So research is showing now that in the field of emotional intelligence, that if you actually pause before you create a solution or you think what you're going to do, that you acknowledge the emotions and how you're feeling first. And you're going to have feelings that are on the surface, and then those feelings are actually covering or would lead to something a little deeper. So the best emotions for you to work with are the ones that are a little deeper. So if you're feeling anger or fear, they're often surface emotions, and underneath of them might be hurt, disappointment, guilt, shame, those kinds of things. So combining those two things and processing our emotions, often people do that by talking with people, getting some support and care, empathy. And journaling. Journaling is a great thing to do as well. If you're a regular journaler, you probably encourage people to do it, because a way to get out thoughts and feelings rather than having them run around your head helps, especially with sleep. So feed and exercise your mind well. Learn to say no. It's another tough one, but an important one. Sometimes you need to know what your limits are, and it's okay to say no. If that means that by saying no, you're putting yourself first when you need to. It's about keeping your cup as filled as possible. If you're not someone who's very good at saying no to people, you can learn a little strategy that can be helpful. Don't feel the need to respond straight away with a yes or a no. It's okay to take some time to think. I'll need to check my diary first, I'll get back to you. And then you can follow it with, unfortunately, it's just not possible this time. Something like that can help us get more used to saying no if you know you're someone who suffers from yesism. Yeah, sometimes we need to learn to say no. A few tips for changing the mind. How to change the mind successfully. Again, a very big topic. I just want to give you a couple tips. Firstly, set some goals. To become more fit or move more might seem like a goal, but it's not very well formed. The best goals are the ones that we get more specific about. When you say more fit, what do you mean? Do you mean a little more walking? Is it a regular exercise thing? Is it how far you can walk, or before you get too puffed or tired? What is it that you're aiming for specifically, and make it measurable so that you'll know how your progress is going. Make it something that's achievable and attractive to you. A number of times I've heard clients say to me, oh, I think I should take up running. I say, oh yeah, do you enjoy running? Not at all. Not at all. Well, that is not an attractive goal. You will not be successful. It's a really hard thing to fall in love with running. It's just an example, but it needs to be attractive to you. Realistic, something that's within your capability and with the resources available to you, and give yourself a bit of a deadline, a time frame when you want to achieve it by. That's what a SMART formula is. Make a plan. A lot of change fails because we don't plan well or get the right advice on how to be successful with a good plan. So, if you can plan it out, you'll probably increase your chances of success. If you're not sure what to do or how to do it, get an expert to help. Yeah, we're here with all this knowledge to be able to empower you to be successful. So you might like to ask someone who's achieved what you want to achieve. How did you do it? Reverse engineer their process. Or talk to someone like your GP. You can work with a health psychologist or a coach, or any other expert on the area that you want to make those changes in. And, very important, break it down into small, achievable steps. Small, achievable steps. Only 1 or 2 changes at a time. It's very tempting for us to do a big overhaul of our life and make huge changes at once, but the system doesn't like that. It throws it out of homeostasis, and it bites back or throws us back to where we were. Small, sustainable changes stick. Yeah, and if you haven't quite mastered something, you're not quite ready for the next thing. And you know you've mastered it when it's just automatic. It's your new habit. A few extra quick tips. We're getting very close to you deciding what you're going to do, walking out of this room tonight. Increasing accountability. Tell someone about what you're planning to do. Help them, get them involved to either cheer you on or check up and follow up with you. And a lot of people go, ooh, telling people, because we're worried about failing, right? But we're more likely to be successful if we let someone know what our plans are and say, look, I might have some times when I'm feeling weak or I'm not doing so well. Will you pep talk me or give me something in that moment? They'll be like, sure thing, buddy. Schedule your change actions. Sometimes we need to put it in the diary for us to do it. or fit it into another part of your routine, your lifestyle, so that that 5-minute meditation happens when you first get out of bed, before all the busyness of the day takes over, or the last thing at night before you go to sleep. Try and make it as fun as you can. Not all change has to be a dreary, do I have to do that thing? Find a way to make it enjoyable, and you're more likely to do it. And if you get someone else involved, like that walk, or whether you want to try intermittent fasting or whatever it is, if you can get somebody else involved, you might find it more enjoyable. Barriers happen. Acknowledge them and address them. Things that get in the way of your success, be aware of them, maybe see if you can plot that ahead, have a bit of a plan on how you'll deal with them. Expect hiccups, expect relapse. Sometimes we fall back, and one of the things people do is they throw the baby out with the bathwater and goes, see, it was never going to work. And that's where we often find ourselves. Hiccups happen, relapses happen, you get back on the horse, you get back on, you reset, you rebound, and you charge ahead again. You don't throw away all that good work. I know it's temptation, but trust me, they happen, and if you know that's going to happen, you'll be more compassionate to yourself. And give yourself rewards, without sugar, if you can. All right, achievable action. So, now here's you thinking about you. So, starting positive change is best done when it's done straight away. When you're in the moment, you're feeling inspired, and you think, right, why not this moment? Why not right now? Why not give it a go? So, what are you going to do? Could be some of these things that I've talked about tonight. Could be maybe even something from Professor Chris's presentation that you're inspired to follow up with. Maybe you want to read more about what he said, or try some things out, or have a chat to your physician. Here's some ideas. So, what are you going to do? You could think of it like this. Thinking of 1 or 2 things you want to do more of or less of. More of or less of. And then here's the follow-on. What's the very first thing? What's the very first step towards that thing that you can do? Think of that. What's the very first thing? The very first thing. Write it down. Tell the person next to you. Make your mental note. If you know that very first thing that you can do, you're much more likely to take action. That might be making a phone call. That could be doing some research. That could be putting out your sneakers tonight before you go to bed. Okay, there's lots of ways that you can do it. The only way I get out of bed and go to the gym in the morning is by having all my gym clothes by the toilet. Go with me on this. Why? Because when I get up in the morning, I've got to pee. And so I change. And once I'm in my gym clothes, I'm going to the gym. Up here for thinking, down there for dancing. All right? What's your thing? So, feel free, if you want more information from me or you want to follow up with me, you can reach out to me in many different ways. I'll be around if you want to ask some questions after. There are some links that are in this Prezi or some research that you might like to follow up on. I've got some resources I'll put up here shortly. But this is an opportunity for a few questions.
Thanks. I've been coming to these sessions for a few years now, and there's a lot of things said about mental health and diets, etc. But interestingly enough, there's never been anything about peer support. Now, if you look at like AA and Gamblers Anonymous and Weight Watchers and things like that, they all seem to be peer support groups. Has it been anything tried in this area with diabetes?
Kathy's got an answer for you.
Thank you for bringing that topic up. It's actually something that's become quite important to Diabetes SA, and we have been looking into support groups. At the moment, we're still collecting a registry of support groups, and if if anyone here is interested in joining a support group or interested in starting up a support group, please contact us at Diabetes SA. We know in the other states that the diabetes organisations are very busy in the area of peer support, so it's something we really want to encourage, and so thank you very much for highlighting it tonight. It is something that we are thinking seriously about and that we know we need to do more about, because there's lots to be done in that area.
You said you've written a book.
Yes.
Is that to go on the internet? Are we able to?
So I have a couple of published articles. They're in the area of mindfulness and fibromyalgia and other things to do with fibromyalgia as well. So if you're interested, if you just look up my name, you'll see some of my publications.
Round of applause.